get my 6. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to a very cold episode here at Homesteading Off the Grid. You read that title correctly. I was actually accosted this morning as I was finishing up my morning run by a former annoying neighbor who I guess would remain annoying if I were to allow him to do so. It's not a clickbait title. This is real. I'm going to tell you the whole story. But I'm also going to share with you, after I talk about this nasty, mean old negative stuff, I'm going to talk about some positive, really interesting stuff. Story sent in to us by a viewer, Charlene Gribble Robinson. Appears as if we've got us another angel story here that I want to share with you to leave you on a good note, leave you on an uplifting note. So, quick backstory. And I want to clarify something here. You know, this channel really got its big injection of success with that how to get rid of an annoying neighbor with a crayon video. And I've talked about, you know, another couple of other annoying folks out this way. There's only been a few, and people have said in the comments, they're like, wow, this guy doesn't get along with any of his neighbors, or he doesn't like any of his neighbors. That's actually quite opposite of the facts. We get along with the few people we have met out here. We get along with almost all of them. There's just been a few that are toxic, and we go out of our way to avoid them. They're not bad people. It's just a situation where maybe our personalities just don't click. Some of it has to do with untreated mental health. We have identified these people of having some issues, having some problems that aren't our problems, and we're not going to make it our problems by having any sort of relationship with them. This doesn't mean that we dislike any of these people, or definitely that we view them as an enemy. Again, to quote Tupac, just because I don't want to be friends with you or even acquaintances with you doesn't mean I want bad things to happen to you. I still want you to eat, just not at my table. It's that simple, but toxic people have a hard time understanding that, as simple as that is. We have neighbors that we have relationships with. We have neighbors who have children our kids' age and they're friends, and sometimes we get together and do stuff. The majority of the folks we know in our area are wonderful. There's a couple farmers, one this way, one that way. If I see them out while I'm mountain biking or jogging, I will actually stop in the middle of a workout just to have a few minutes of words with them, because they're wonderful people. They're pleasant, they're positive, they don't overstep any bounds. And this brings us now to the annoying neighbor that accosted me this morning. I'm going to tell you what happened and how I dealt with it. I think I did the right thing. So, not a bad guy. Again, not a bad guy at all. He's older, he's retired, and I think he's very bored. He approached us after we had already lived here for a couple of years, even though he lives right around the corner and we'd seen him before, but he'd never come by. And I talked about this a couple of years ago when it happened. I was thinking, why is this guy coming by now? And my natural instinct is to not trust. I have trust issues. They go way back, like to the womb. Okay. Well, pretty soon we found out it's because he wanted to hunt the deer on our property, and we let him know we don't hunt on our property, nor do we allow others. So that's why he stopped in the first place. We were pleasant. We were polite. He stayed longer than we would have preferred him to those first few times. But I figured, well, okay, I made it clear to him we're not going to let him hunt deer on our property, so he's probably not going to come back. Well, he did. A lot. If he would see us out, he would take it upon himself to come over. I guess his attitude was, I'm old, I'm retired, I'm bored, my wife's never home. When I see this young family out, they're going to entertain me for however long I want to take up their time. And it just wasn't working for us. And I even politely kind of let him know, you know, we work from home. Our time's valuable. And a lot of folks have a hard time understanding this. We have other friends, and it's so unfortunate because I just don't invite them out anymore. They think that, well, if you work from home, you're always there. So if I tell you I'm going to come to your place at 1 and I don't get there until 3:30, it's okay because you're there anyway. Well, no, it's not, because if you're coming at 1, I'm going to work until 12:45, and then I'm going to stop to greet you at 1. And if you're 2.5 hours late, that's 2.5 hours of productivity I lost. And I explained to this older gentleman, the importance of my time and how I guard it very closely. I don't get paid by the hour. I don't get paid per unit. I mean, like book sales, yeah, but I do a type of work. It's cranial. I write, I create social media. It involves a lot of reading, just a lot of natural creativity, a lot of effort, a lot of time. And here's the thing about it is you don't know when that idea is going to strike. I might be sitting in my yard at 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, enjoying the beauty of the different colored leaves in the fall. And I will get reminded of something that can either lead to a really entertaining short story or a full-length novel. That's just how the creative process works. But if I have people imposing on me, uninvited at that, coming around, sucking up my time like a succubus, those magic moments don't happen. So I told my wife, I said, as much as I would not want to be like this, I think there's only one way to deal with this guy. And I'm going to use this analogy, and I don't mean to compare this guy to a stray animal. He's a human being, and stray animals are animals, and they're worthy. They have value too. But we all know that if you feed a stray, it ain't leaving. It's going to keep coming back because it got what it needed from you. This older gentleman needed somebody to allow him to waste their time to entertain him because he's bored. So the only way I saw that we could make it clear to him that we're not that family that you're going to do this with was to completely ignore him. When we saw him, don't acknowledge that he's there. If he started to come at us, which he would, if he saw us, he was walking down the road, and this is before the trees got big enough to where he can't see now, we would go in the house and shut the door. And we would make sure that he saw us go in the house and shut the door. And there were a couple of times I was working down there, and I had to make it apparent that I was intentionally walking away from him and hiding behind a tree until he left, and then I would go out and continue my work. I looked like an a-hole, but I had to do it because he's the type of individual that mistakes kindness for weakness. And we were polite, we were kind, we were tolerant of him coming here uninvited and wasting a lot of our time for too long. And he viewed it as a weakness, viewed it as a pushover. Well, he stopped when we were intentionally letting him know, hey, we see him coming, we turn our backs. He says hi, we act like we didn't hear it. So that's been the case for a couple of years, and it's been wonderful. So then there was this morning. Here's the accosted part. I often see this guy when I'm running or when I'm biking, and if he says hi or if he speaks, I say nothing. And I hate to have to do that. I'm not like that with anyone else, but everyone else, and I know some of these people, some of them I don't. They say hi, I say hi back. I say hi, they say hi back. And then I continue my workout or they continue their lawn work or whatever they're doing, but nobody tries to capitalize the next 2 hours of that other person's life. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not describing something here that none of you have ever experienced or have never heard of. If you're over 30, probably if you're over 20, you've experienced these types of people. And again, they're not bad people. Just, hey, you're bored, I get it, but that's your problem, not mine. I'm not going to make it my problem. So anyway, I'm running this morning. I'm finishing up my run right out here in front of the house. And I see him. He's actually walking the same way I'm running. He's on the wrong side of the road. You're supposed to walk and run against traffic. I hope you guys know that. But then you cycle with traffic, okay? He was on the wrong side of the road. So I finished my run, and my first instinct was, well, to duck up and cut up into my yard and he wouldn't even see me. And I said, no. I start and finish my runs at that cedar tree. It takes me about 50 yards because I go at a pretty good clip, especially at the end. I always make sure not to leave anything on the road. I want to, to my own self be true. So I often surge the last quarter mile or half mile of a workout. And it takes me 50 or 60 yards to actually come to a walk. And I said, I'm not going to alter what I always do because he's there. So I finished my run the way I always do. It took me about 50 or 60 yards to come to a walk. Turn around, start coming up, and coming back. I always walk a lap around. It's 1/3 of a mile. Like 3 laps around my property is a mile. I walk a lap for my cool down. It takes about 10 minutes, 10 or 12 minutes. Well, I'm walking past him. He's on the other side of the road. I had sunglasses on because you can see it's very bright. And I just had my head was down. My heart's pumping. I'm hearing it in my ears, sweating, still breathing hard. So I'm just not looking at him. And he said, looks like fun. And I just kept walking. Hated to do it. I just hate to be like that with someone. But again, some people, I had a sergeant first class in the Army, when I was at Fort Lewis, and he said, and this is some of the wisest words I've ever heard. He said, I will treat you how you let me know you want to be treated. If you treat me with respect and you treat me like a man, I will treat you with respect and I will treat you like a man. Eddie Baker, Sergeant First Class Eddie Baker. I've told this story before. I thought, man, that is some wisdom right there. This guy's dropping some wisdom, and he had been in the Army like 20 years. I've adopted that philosophy. So the neighbors that we do have good terms and relationships with, have let us know they want to have good relationships, be on good terms, not overstep bounds. We do the same. And it's wonderful. Some of these folks we've actually known out here for years, have spoken with for years. I just don't talk about that on YouTube because who wants to hear about that, right? Social media, everybody's all about the drama. So he says, looks like fun. I completely ignore him because he's let me know how he wants to be treated. He wants to either be completely ignored so he will not bother me, or if I'm polite and kind, he will bother me for hours a day. I don't have time for that. So I kept walking, and then he said, effing redneck. And he didn't say effing, he said the real word. I almost turned around and I said, no, that's showing acknowledgement. That's like maybe a student in school who has behavioral problems. Any acknowledgement with people who think this way or behave that way, they view it as any attention is better than no attention, even if it's negative attention. So for him to call me an effing redneck right in the street in front of my house when I was merely finishing my morning run, if I were to have acknowledged that, that would have started the ball rolling again. But then instead of coming around and being somewhat pleasant while he was wasting my time, he'd be coming around to argue like the hay collector. Whatever. We don't want any more of those. So I kept walking, didn't say anything in return. The first thought that went through my head, it's funny because this guy moved down here from a northern state, and it's not uncommon to have a lot of folks. Met a lot of folks from the north who are wonderful people. They love living in the south. You'd think they're from the south, minus the accent part. But a lot of them come down and tell us how we do everything wrong, how they did everything in the north, and how ignorant we are, how we can't even pronounce words properly. So he's kind of one of those types. So I completely did not acknowledge him because I didn't want to start the ball rolling again. But my first thought was, well, at least he didn't call me a dumb hillbilly, like some of the pretentious snobs from around here. He just assumed I'm from the south, I guess, since I live here. So I almost laughed that off. Well, I did laugh it off in my head, but I want to share this with you. I've got to keep a notebook on our bookshelf in the living room. So at night when my wife, beautiful bride Dearly, aka Giggly Girl, and I are watching movies, sometimes I'll hear a line in a movie that is so wise or so spot on, I should write it down. And last week we were watching a wonderful movie I can't believe I had not seen until now. Had two of my favorite actors of all time ever in it, Denzel Washington and Russell Crowe. It was a movie called American Gangster. It was the true story of the first major black mob boss in America. The character was played by Denzel Washington. And there was a scene in there where he was talking to one of his mentors. And it had something to do with what I'm talking about now. You know, you don't want to be mean to anybody. You wish you could be nice to everybody, but there's just some people you can't be nice to, or they become a problem because they confuse your kindness as weakness. So his mentor said to him when he brought this up, he said, look, he says, you can be successful and have enemies, or you can be nice and have friends. And that's what thought went through my head immediately after I said, well, at least he didn't call me a dumb hillbilly. Thought, well, you know, you can be successful and have enemies, or you can be nice and have friends. Now, I know that in reality, you can be both. I am successful and There's probably a lot of people who don't like me because of that. Probably a lot of people who just don't like me for other reasons. I get it. But I'm friendly to those who have shown me they desire me to be friendly with them because they are also friendly with me, and they don't mistake my friendliness as a form of weakness or that I'm a pushover. So you can do both, but this guy is an example of somebody with whom you can't. You've got to do either one or the other. So I said nothing to him. Again, I gave no acknowledgement. I'm sure he's watching this video. I don't care. So yeah, I mean, I told my wife about it. I was like, wow, we live out in the country. Not a lot of people around here. I'm going to be 48 next week. I started running when I was 14. So I've been running for 34 years. There have been times in my life when I would go months and months and months without missing a single day of running. In the last 14 years, I took 2 years off because after I got hurt in the Army, they told me I couldn't run again without pain. I actually was dumb enough to believe them. Didn't do it. So you take out those 2 years, that's 40 or 32 years I've been running. I bet you I've run every day for 30 of those years, minus the 2 years where I'd taken days off. That's how much I've ran. I've never had anyone accost me like that during or after a run. I've never had anyone threaten me, act inappropriately in any way, shape, or form. That was a first. And what I'll tell you is this guy's certainly old enough to know better. I mean, he's up there. He's aged. Wow. But I think I handled it best by simply doing nothing. But I think it's a story worth telling. Now, with that said, it's time to read you a more uplifting story. And there's some uplifting parts to that story too. It's like, look, man, and I'm not going to name names and I'm not going to point in directions. But again, there are people out here who treat us with respect and dignity and are kind to us, and they want nothing in return for it. Therefore, we are kind and respectful and treat them with dignity as well, and we want nothing in return for it. It is a two-way street. It really is a two-way street. But when the street only goes one way, I get off the street. All right, enough said about that. That sun's starting to blind you, so let me turn it like this. I told a story out here a couple weeks ago about something very odd that happened once when I was running in the woods, about a greyhound just mysteriously appearing from out of nowhere and going home with me, but then vanishing as mysteriously as it had shown up. And this reminded a lot of folks. A lot of folks said that dog was an angel. Somebody shared with us a story about an angel, experience with an angel they had in Texas that saved their lives. Yesterday, I read a story from viewer Timothy Howard about how an angel saved his life in Massachusetts, back when he was 14 during a snowstorm. Well, now we've got an angel story from Charlene Gribble Robinson. This is interesting. Listen to this one. Kevin, I've hesitated to tell you this story because it's not mine, so I can't identify the couple, friends of mine, who experienced this. But I know them and I have no reason to doubt it. It happened a few years ago, and your greyhound story brought it to mind. Lookout Mountain / Chickamauga National Park is a huge area in the northwest section of Georgia and the southeast section of Tennessee. It was a major battlefield in the Civil War, and with the beautiful woods and scenery, is a very popular destination for hikers and bicyclists. And of course, with its history, there are countless stories of the supernatural. I have had a couple of experiences there myself, but that is not what this post is about. For decades, there have been rumors and stories about covens meeting in some of the more isolated sections of the woods to carry out their rituals and sacrifices. People claim to have found evidence of animal sacrifice more than once. I can't speak to any of that. It's just hearsay to me, but it does pertain to an experience my friends had. They love to walk the trails through the park on Sunday afternoons, having time alone and just enjoying nature. One day they decided to go to a section they had never been before. They drove to the parking spot nearest to it and got out of the car, heading to the entrance into the forest. But two huge black dogs walked from the woods to meet them and blocked their progress. One in front of him and one in front of her. My friends stopped and looked at the dogs, who were staring at them intently. The husband, after looking around for a rock or tree limb or anything to use as a weapon, was already thinking about how all he could do was throw his wife down and cover her with his body to protect her from the dogs. But the dogs were just standing in the path, making no sound or movement. He said they were huge, almost waist high, and solid black. They were no breed he had ever seen, and he is a dog lover. He told his wife not to move and not to break eye contact no matter what. He took her hand and said 1 step back, just one. When they did that, the dogs walked up to them and stood beside them, a dog on either side. My friends took another step back. The dogs stepped with them. They seemed to be protecting them now rather than menacing them, and now the dogs were also looking back down the trail into the woods and then back at my friends with a sense of urgency in their eyes. They were telling them to get out of there. So they slowly turned around and started walking to their car. The dogs, still one on his side and one on hers, continued to walk with them while casting glances back to the woods. When they got to the car, he opened her door and got her in, telling her not to get out no matter what. When he stepped back and closed her door, her dog went to the door and sat down, his back to the car and his eyes on the woods. He was definitely in guard mode. Then his dog walked him to the driver's side and watched as he got in and started the engine. As my friend pulled slowly out, his dog followed the car to the road, then stood there watching until they were out of sight. The other dog was still watching the woods. Were they angels? I think so. Charlene, I think so too. I mean, what a story. What a story. Thanks for sharing that. A lot of folks will often say, hey, I have a story. How can I get it to you? Just put it in the comment section. I mean, if it's something you don't mind other people, seeing, it is that simple. That's an amazing story. I was hesitant to tell my Greyhound story because I thought, man, who's going to believe that? This was almost identical, except they were walking and not running. There were 2 of them and there were 2 dogs. Was that Greyhound trying to lead me away from something that day all those years ago? Gosh, who knows? Anyway, there's your stories for the day. The one about getting accosted by an aged retiree who's upset with me because we don't allow him to monopolize our very valuable time. And then a story about angels, story I prefer. Hey, if I had my pick, angels or people, I know who I'd go with. All right, most people, to be honest with you, because most people are wonderful. Hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you for more next time. But I wouldn't turn any angels away either. They're okay too.